Yo, and welcome to the MixWizard Sessions, episode 8, the Mix Bus Sessions. Now, first things first, a little shout out to my friends at Taramara Music here for the non-squeaky drum stool. Matt and Don hooked me up with a non-squeaking chair, so thanks guys. So, the Mix Bus episode. I had a bit of a concern call from an Allen and Heath user, Blakey from On the Buses. Let's take a look at his call in to me and then let's unpack that.
Butler said to me, why don't you get one of these things? It's called an audio mixer. And apparently it's got buses on it. So I started playing and then I found out I didn't know where all the buses were going to. It's got auxiliary buses, matrices, it's got group buses, it's even got a master mix bus. I need some help.
So as you can see, Blakey's a little bit confused about the buses on his console. So today I'm going to show you how I use buses and when I use buses when I'm mixing shows. I've got some multitracks in this one that I'm going to upload as well. It's an orchestra show because that's when I tend to use a lot of buses. Okay, buses are just a way of getting audio from the source to the destination, okay? It's just a routing path, that's all it is. So I tend to use buses or groups, which we're gonna have a good look at. I use groups as a way of combining sounds when I want to process them or EQ them as a group. For example, when we look at my show, I've got an orchestra, so I've got strings. That strings section is about 30 players, okay? And I bring that to a stereo group where I can then EQ or compress that group. Same with the brass. The brass could be, by the time you've got 5 trumpets, 4 or 5 trombones, it can be 12, 16 brass players, French horns, and I group those down where then as a group, I can apply an overall EQ and overall compression setting. So let's first have a little understanding, and I'm going to put up a slide here that shows you the input-output, because there's some important things to understand about D-Live. D-Live is a 0.7 millisecond architecture, which in itself, it is the lowest latency console that you can get, okay? So please understand that. Latency is incredibly important because that's the time it takes for the audio to come in and go out. And we want the lowest latency, okay? Because especially for in-ears or in any of those applications, latency is not your friend. So looking at this diagram here, you can see that I can go inputs, I can have my deep processing, my compressor models, okay? I can have any of those. I can go to groups, I can go to mains, auxiliaries, and then to matrices, and that is all within my 0.7 milliseconds. So I'm going to stop here and talk because there are some guys that go, oh, but I want to be able to go group to group to group, okay? And there's a reason why, Allen and Heath, you can do it, but you've got to consciously know what you're doing here because you're now breaking out of that 0.7 millisecond framework that they've put in place to give you a great performing console, okay? Now, when I mix a theatre show, I actually don't even activate a main left-right on the console. What I do is I activate 2 stereo auxiliaries and I name one of them music and I name the other one vocals. And then I have a whole range of groups, again, like we'll look at in this session, where the groups are managing all of the strings, the wind, the brass, the drum kit. They all end up going to the auxiliary that is called music. So this is one of the great things about D-Live. If you manage it this way, you're in the 0.7 milliseconds. So I've got a whole range of groups. I can have 10 stereo groups that all go to one master called music, which is an auxiliary because groups can go to auxiliaries within the framework. And then I put all my vocals, which might be, you know, radio mics, it might be a pit chorus, it might be BVs, it could be a choir, all of those vocal groups, so I can have a whole range of vocal groups that then go to my vocal master, and then they are summed, so my music master and my vocal master are then summed at the matrix. And if you work in this method, you can have that 0.7 milliseconds, you're abiding by those rules, okay? So that's how you do many groups to a master group to your matrix, okay? And I do that all the time in theatre shows. When I load up a theatre show and we talk Theatre D Live, I'll show you a bit more about that, because then I matrix to a whole range of different zones and different balances of that music and that vocal mix. So let's dive into this. This is a theatre show. This is a music show that I mix. One thing I'll say up front, the orchestra in this, when you have a look at it, this is stemmed down. So this show has about 300 audio inputs when we mix this show live, okay? There is an audio submix that comes for the orchestra, because the orchestra is about 100 odd channels, and that gets submixed down to a whole bunch of stems. I've then got those stems, but I still want to manage those, and I use audio groups for that. So we're going to take a look, and you'll see my audio groups as I look through them. They've got EQ, they've got compression and things like that. So let's take a little look at the session. And the chair didn't squeak. So in this session, you'll see, working from left to right, I've got a whole bunch of groups going on, audio groups here. So I've got kit, band, strings, wind, brass, percussion, piano. The other groups, they're for other songs. I'm not using them in this current song, okay? And if I go to my top layer, I do manage things. You'll see here, I've got a whole lot of DCAs. And then I can and I love about the console, I can spill the DCAs and get that content straight in front of me very fast. So if we have a quick look before we even hit any audio, you'll notice on these groups, I'm applying compression. Okay, if we go to strings, I've got EQ on them, the wind, I've got EQ on the wind, brass, I've got a compressor on the brass. We're not really using the percussion. The piano, I'm using compression on the piano. So I'm still also EQing things on the channel strips, but the groups are a way of me managing them together. Let's have a little look at a section of the song. Okay, if I just jump in here, and you'll get an idea of what we've got going on. I'm just going to play a little bit.
He came my way, and as we spoke of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me, it was the greatest joy.
Now I'm going to mute the vocal, jump here. Have a look at these groups, and you'll see, if I do this, you can see the compression as groups. So you can see I'm using the groups to just compress the whole brass section, okay, or compress. Piano's got 2 mics in it, okay? So that's how I use groups. For me, I'm only using audio groups when I'm trying to take a whole range of channels and then process them as a package. When I tend to mix rock shows, most of the time I'll use DCAs to control the band elements. I just mix to left-right. Most rock shows I do, if I've got 2 guitars, I don't need 2 guitars to go to a group to process them. I can EQ them quite happily on the group, and you know, I might have 1 vocal and 1 keyboard, or 2 vocals. I can very happily process that on the individual channel level. This is about controlling a massive group. Sometimes you might have 20 choir mics, okay? And if you've got to go individual EQ all those 20 choir mics, it's really easy. You put the 20 choir mics to an audio group and then process that as an audio group. So in this instance, in this show, these groups all go to my left-right, and then from left-right they go to a matrix and to the PA. So I'm within the 0.7 milliseconds, okay? When I do theatre, as I said earlier, when I do theatre shows, I have a different approach and I don't even activate a stereo mix bus because theatre shows are all about matrixing off to many zones of speakers. So let's have another little look at some elements of what's actually going on in this show. So jumping over here, let's go to, there's a bit of a solo here. And again, you can see the groups are a great way of managing that audio on a couple of channels. I'll actually play a bit back and we'll look at how many channels are really actually going on here. So I'm gonna unspill the groups. So we've got a drum kit playing. The rhythm section, we've got bass guitars, strings, wind, brass. You know, the full orchestra. So there's a lot going on in this piece. Over land and sea, a little shy and sad of. Now, when you have a bit of a dive into this, if you're going to have a go at mixing this, you'll find there's a lot of spill in an orchestra. If you've never mixed an orchestra before, there's a lot of spill going on, okay? So, you know, you've got to use your filters and EQ and get rid of as much noise and other things that you don't want, okay? So, hopefully this is giving you an understand. Now, really, I am talking about groups. Auxiliaries, I'm only using as an example of using an auxiliary really as another group in these applications, okay? Other applications when you're using auxiliaries is if you're just mixing monitors and you've got lots of auxiliaries going to all your stage fallbacks. If you're using that in a standard setup where you're going input to your auxiliary to your output, you're still within that 0.7 millisecond framework, okay? That's your aim as an engineer, to work within that framework, and you will get the best out of your D-Live, okay? So I hope this is helping you, Blakey. Now, there's one other thing, Blakey. Never use bus 11, okay? So just on your console, just never use it, okay? So that's just for Blakey. Everyone else can use bus 11, but Blakey will know what that means, okay? So I hope this has been helpful, okay? The other little one that I'm gonna just go jump and have a look at, and I think I set it up, we'll find out quickly. I'm using this other trick, which I showed with vocals, where when the orchestra's not playing, I'm attenuating the top end on channels. So let's go see if I did activate this in this session. I normally do. So if I go to my string channels, and I'm gonna spill them, and I go select. Yeah, okay, so I've got this insert here. So I will probably have that on most of the string channels. Okay, yep, not on the double bass. Double basses have got both, and the cellos have nothing. So this is the trick that I showed in another episode that we use on vocals. I use this on orchestras. So I'm gonna play a section of this song, and you'll see when the strings, I might go back to here earlier, this section. When the strings play, it opens up, and when the strings don't play, it's attenuating all the top end to get rid of spill, to keep my mix cleaner. So let's have a little look. So this is the violins. So the violins are playing, they're opening up, so you can see it. Not playing. It was the greatest joy you ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. So you can see them opening and closing there. Now, there's so much live elements going on here that they're bouncing around a bit. But trust me, it cleans up your mix immensely. Okay, so that's just another little tidbit. Okay, so in the next episode, I'm going to jump in and have a little look at how I'm using Wave Sound Grid as my interface. So I'm going to explain that to everyone, okay? I hope that's been helpful, and Blakey, I hope you have a lot of fun mixing. You may need to upgrade your console.
I love you, MixWizard. Get those buses out of here.